All right, and away we go. Jose, it's all you.
All right, welcome back, guys. This is the first meeting of the summer 22 term for the Business Entrepreneur Private Practice Student Special Interest Group. So definitely thank you for all of you guys in attendance, taking the time out, kind of build the community and continue to learn outside of our typical curriculum. But yeah, today we have Dr. Josh Funk of Rehab to Perform. And this is something I've been looking forward to for a while now. So kind of just to get us started, could you share how you started Rehab to Perform, kind of like your origin story?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm being honest, I always will talk about early childhood stuff, because I think largely we become a byproduct of traits, experiences, things that we found that we were good at. And I think a lot of it's probably rooted in things that just kind of were eventually, when I get to my college story, it's just kind of right place, right time, right person. But growing up, I was somebody who had a natural affinity for physical activity. I was a very, very curious human being. I was somebody who frequently was getting either S's or N's with regards to my ability to not speak when the teacher was speaking. I just enjoyed conversation, generally enjoyed connecting with people. And then that turned into me finding my strengths, which were largely science-based and eventually anatomy-based. When I got to high school, anatomy and physiology, I was in a global ecology magnet, which was definitely not PT related, but I think science related. It was very, very hands-on. There was a lot of much more practical style learning rather than lecture learning. And then eventually when I got to college, after playing 9 different sports as a youth, I played college lacrosse at Ohio State. It was my sophomore year where I had my first serious injury and was still kind of dabbling around. I was a bio major at that point in time. And somebody first said to me the words surgery. And that was the first time in my life where I think my identity as an athlete got chipped away at. And I was fortunate to be at a Division I athletics environment, I think, where we had access to a lot of high-level people, high-level resources, high-level environments. I had just about everything and anything I could possibly ask for to do what I wanted to do, which was to try to play the rest of the season. If I was going to need surgery, I was going to need surgery at the end of the season. And through my relationships with somebody I consider my first mentor, Janine Oman, who was our team PT at Ohio State. She's now an assistant athletic director there. Through the athletic training staff and strength and conditioning staff, of whom are more than just one person. But the seamless integration and coordination of my care, I think, was something that I just became gravitated to. And something I also really, really enjoyed was the athletic training room. It was loud. It was a little bit chaotic. It was social. And overall, a very, very enjoyable healthcare environment, not just a sporting environment, but a healthcare environment. I was challenged every day. I was pushed. I made regular improvement. I was given new things to put myself in a situation where I could figure out, whether or not I'd potentially need surgery at the end of the season. At the end of the year, the only thing that really, really hurt was me shooting as hard as possible and taking a relatively high-speed blow from somebody else. So I had improved a ton to the point where initially I couldn't lift my wrist above my shoulder, to a point where I was able to go through games and not really even have any issues at all. So for me, I was like, yeah, I want to try a summer of rehab. And if I need to get surgery, I guess maybe I'll get it in the fall, but I'm feeling really optimistic. And then I came home and I got exposed to general population physical therapy, which just did not speak to me. It was more like a physician's office. I did not feel challenged. I did not feel like anybody could even look at my summer workout packet and remotely help me out with some of the things that I was going to be needing to do at some point. And it wasn't social. I would equate it more to elevator music than some of the stuff that maybe I'm used to at our offices now. And I self-discharged after 2 visits. That was it. And I was doing telehealth, I guess, before telehealth was even a thing, in terms of just connecting with my staff at school. And I kind of communicated with them, rehabbed, troubleshooted, tweaked stuff, learned through different resources online, both formally through interactions with them and informally. And I never had to get surgery. I shot over 100 miles per hour the rest of my career, played 2 more years at the college level and 2 more years also professionally. And then that was pretty much where, that period of time where I was like, man, I couldn't imagine myself in a different environment, being able to connect with people and being able to kind of give them a new lease on life, to troubleshoot, problem solve every day, to continue to push into curiosities, and to eventually put myself in a situation where the environment, the education, what was communicated, everything soup to nuts was very, very similar to my experience in Division I athletics. And at that point, I got into the University of Maryland for graduate school. That's where I spent my 3 years at PT school. I could probably speak to a ton of different things that I exposed myself during that time, outside of just the formal curriculum. And then I was dead set on eventually opening up a private practice. So I worked for 2 other private practice owners over the course of a 3-year period, and Rehab to Perform opened after about 3.5 years in December of 2014. And here we are with 7 locations currently, about to open our 8th in a new state in Northern Virginia. And we have a team of almost 50, but we have 31 PTs at this point in time, and just plans to continue to move forward in the future. And hopefully continue to also diversify our offerings outside of just adding brick and mortar locations.
That's awesome. And I kind of totally agree with you on that disconnect that you mentioned from like the collegiate setting that you were coming from to that Gen Pop kind of rehab setting. So follow-up question to that is like, why do you think there's such a disconnect, or like, how has that disconnect been created?
I mean, I think largely, if you look at the roots of our profession, it's just so intricately tied to physicians. I mean, where did you see a ton of business decades and decades ago? I mean, I think largely they were either right next to a physician office or potentially in the same setting. So maybe a formal healthcare, a physician setting was something that we got our influence from, but I find myself trying to be more and more like Orange Theory and CrossFit and F45 and a Division I athletics environment than anything, because those are things that people actually have good experiences with. Those are things that people walk into and they go, I want to be here. This speaks to me. I'm connected, just literally physically standing in the space, let alone stuff that ideally gets provided to the individuals working there that allows things like the messaging, communication, deliverables, all of the things that you're trying to accomplish from a service delivery standpoint that allow what is being communicated to that individual to speak to them too. So I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think we can all probably relate to the very, very hospital vibe, white walls, older felt, soft fabric chair, very, very poor music selection, a plastic thing that goes in front of the receptionist that they pretty much close communication on, and who knows what they're saying about you behind the plastic, the screen there, them being also potentially 45 minutes late, you sitting on a paper crinkly seat table. There's a bunch of bones and just medical jargon on walls. Like, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on about just presentation in itself. And I'm such a big brand person. If you ever seen our space, it's definitely very intentional. But yeah, I mean, it's something that ideally we continue to have conversations about, and we continue to kind of shift the way we present and brand the profession. And it starts with the companies that are doing things within the profession.
Yeah, I would even argue that that goes into the geriatric population too, Josh. We're trying to break out of that, medical mold a little bit as well with the hashtag old not weak, and we have, elderly folks. I teach the geriatric course here for Austin's campus. And, we're trying to show that we don't have to underdose these elderly folks, right? They can do more. We should push them more. And if that means trying deadlifts, trying squats, getting to a CrossFit box. We've seen it. We've seen, stories about the geriatric population getting out and being more active. And we're going to see that more even, I think, as the baby boomers come. So we just got to break down those silos. So I'm glad that you're out there doing that.
A big part of it too, that we try to communicate even to people who are maybe on the fence or a little bit apprehensive because they look at our environment and they go, it's not for me. You have to have an athlete's mindset. And when I think about an athlete's mindset, I largely think of the top rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs with self-actualization. Do you have an individual that wants to improve enough to self-actualize? And if you have somebody, no matter where their starting point is, no matter their age, no matter everything that they've experienced at some point in their life, they should have the ability to continue to self-actualize. So it's up to us to make sure that we are meeting people where they're at, figuring out where they want to get to, reverse engineering the process, and figuring out what is meaningful through the course of that process, cultivating self-optimism, putting them in a situation where they're able to see some of these small wins to eventually, put them in a situation where they can continue to block off time and pay money to have you be a part of their self-actualization journey.
Got you. So Josh, you mentioned the brand that you try to uphold within your clinic. So my question to you is, from December 2014, how have you been able to scale to soon to be 8 locations while still kind of maintaining the identity that you had in mind for your original clinic? What does that look like over the years as your team grows and all that?
Yeah, no, if I look back to the original clinic, there's some stuff that definitely has stood over the years. The t-shirts that we put on art canvases allow patients that come in to the offices that are at a gym, people that are at a university, people that are part of a run club, youth that are at high schools, to kind of claim their spot on the wall to kind of tie in the community and also have connectivity to it. So that's just a small thing that we've had. We've got whiteboards where we educate people, where we write home programs, where we reference links, reference reading materials, because nobody loses their phone. They lose stereotypical or very cookie cutter exercise sheets that are a knee sheet for you, a knee sheet for you, and a knee sheet for you. And then from a waiting room and overall on the wall standpoint, we have positive affirmations everywhere. We have things that will put people in a mindset where they're in the right place. We have a Thomas Edison quote that references nutrition and taking care of the human frame. We have references to motivation and habit formation. We have references to progress in process. We have references to perform for life, which kind of ties in with our rehab to perform. And we have a quote that's been above the door ever since we've opened: be greater than yesterday, which once again ties into self-actualization. So I think there's, those small things have kind of stuck with us throughout the course of the year. Those are probably the biggest 3: positive affirmations, the local ties to the t-shirt wall, and then the emphasis on whiteboards at every place that allows people to connect, allows people to educate, and ideally allows us to educate to empower people. But then if I get into really how do you scale, first you have to learn how to do things well the first time. Let's be honest. You have to have success. You have to get to a point where you can add people, which add layers of complexity because humans are complex, and get them to operate under some kind of macro principles. For any company, it's going to be your mission, your vision, your core values. We've gone as far as to kind of map out our operating principles, of which the company, everybody in the company kind of agrees on. This is how we operate as we move forward each day. But after that, then how do you add more geographical reach. All right, I've kind of done what I need to do, or done what I thought I could do in this particular space. How can I replicate it? We really screwed that up the second time. I can tell you how not to open a second office and how to do a better job of opening up that second office, because we had about 6 months of just an absolute cluster. It was not advantageous. I made some poor decisions with regards to how LLCs and insurance contracts, relationships were formed. We actually didn't get paid for almost 3 months at that office. So I actually had to let somebody go because of an issue that I made with regards to things that affected cash flow. So that was incredibly humbling. I still never forget that feeling. And that person honestly went to PT school with me a year below me and has never talked to me since that moment. So that's still something that, I'll mention a lot of success and a lot of wins, but you never forget those L's that you take that definitely kind of weigh on you throughout the course of the years. But after that, I was pretty convinced that I didn't want to do franchising, but I was like, hey, franchises all look the same. They follow operating procedures, the standard operating procedures. They have systems and processes in place. So I actually went to an iFranchise convention in New York City. And I just sat and I was in there, I think it was 3 or 4 days. And I went into all of these different franchising courses, connected with franchise people, got franchise resources. And I had it in my head that we were going to always operate like a corporate entity, but think like a franchise. So we started to put things in place that were repeatable for individuals, regardless of the location, repeatable for individuals, regardless of whether or not they were with us or they were with us for a long period of time or with us for a relatively short period of time. And ideally, that allowed us to honestly have a tremendous amount of success eventually at those 2 offices. So we get to a point where we've got 2 offices and they're functioning relatively the same. Well, the second one didn't go well originally, but both are doing really, really well at a certain point. So what do? You just have to test and trial it again. You either add people or you add a location. So we added a 3rd location. It was much easier to add that location. It was much easier to make the decision. It was much easier to open it. It was much easier to hire. It's much easier to have early success. And if we needed to, we could get into KPIs at some point. And then eventually we opened up a 4th office. That 3rd office was right around Memorial Day weekend of 2019. The 4th office was right around New Year's of 2020. What a time to open up a 4th office. 2.5 months, we're off like exactly like we want to. We've got great trajectory, a lot of traction in the area with regards to just getting where we want to get to quicker than we've ever gotten to, which at the end of the day is a break-even point with regards to monthly profitability. And then COVID happened. So you got the rug pulled right out from under you. And you just are trying to figure things out. Q2 2020 for a lot of people is tremendously challenging. Had to make decisions I don't think I hopefully will ever have to make again. With regards to staffing, the word furlough comes to mind. So you're navigating that. You have people temporarily not with you. You're navigating benefits. You're navigating policy and procedure. We were in 2 different counties at that point in time. One actually, which is right splitting kind of where people from 4 counties will come. So you're trying your best to manage what's going on societally. You've got internal comms that are important. You got external comms that are important. And overall, that's leading you during this whole period to improve your process. And if I can have anybody think about anything with regards to business, great companies compete on process. And the one thing that we've been great about throughout the course, and I even referenced that same quote in an email that literally I sent out probably about 2 or 3 hours ago. But if you can continually be reflective and aware enough to recognize where your process can use improvement, and ideally you are always admitting, and I'll even admit 8 years down the road, right, which will be the later this December, we still can improve process. There always has to be a better practice. There's new technology. There's new stuff that we're learning. There's new workflows. There's new things going on societally. There's always going to be new. So that curious mindset, or that beginner's mindset that I referenced early in my life, where I've always just kind of been a tinkerer, we just tinkered a lot. And we tinkered and we built a better business, even though we weren't necessarily in a situation where business was great. Instead, we looked at stuff. We went, what can we work on? Because at some point, this is not going to be affecting us the way that it is. And we just kept messing with stuff. We opened up our 5th office in July of 2021. We opened up 6 in November of 2021. We opened up 7. It was either early May or late April. And then we have 8 set to open up sometime this summer. And we're going to probably shoot for somewhere around probably 4 a year from here on out, as long as we continue to be able to kind of stay on top of things. And who knows, maybe things, you add a 5th in here or there, but largely we're in a really, really good spot. I have tremendous people. I will never discount the fact that your first hires are some of your most important hires. They are your culture keepers. They, quote unquote, one of our operating principles is protect the brand. They protect the brand better than anybody, and they have over the years. And it makes it so much easier that when you add employee 49, 50, and 51, we got 49 other people doing what we need to do. Don't come in and screw it up. Versus early on, it's a lot harder to add 3, add 4, add 5, because there's such a bigger percentage of them in terms of what they can impact and influence. So I know it went a lot of different ways there, and I could probably speak to this for hours and hours and hours. But process is what people compete on, and process is what companies compete on. And at the end of the day, if you want to scale yourself, which is what building a company is, it's scaling yourself to a certain extent. Process starts with yourself, and then process needs to be reflected in the company that you have.
Yeah, you got a lot of huge takeaway points there, Josh. I think one of them that I'm hearing with all this that you're talking about is culture, right? Building yourself, your reputation, and putting it out there and trying to repeat it is creating that culture so that the protectors of the brand are there throughout the whole company, right? You need that company culture in order to do that. But I think also one of the things that you kind of touched on there is you need systems. You need things that are repeatable, right? In order to scale and keep it, going the way that you want it to go, right? Can you talk a little bit about the difference and what your day-to-day looks like as far as like when you first started and were working in your business to now working on the business to get that scalability that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, there has to be somebody in the company that is dealing with the success of the company. And when I say success of the company, I think a lot of people will largely look at things that are a little bit more short-term, right? You've got your short-term KPIs, you've got money in, money out. You've got a certain amount of profitability associated with it. You have a certain amount of growth.
Hang on a minute, break that down for us. KPIs, for those of you who don't know, are key performance indicators, which is what every business basically looks at to see, are they hitting the marks or not, right? Yes. So go ahead. Sorry. Continue with a little bit of what you're looking at with those.
Yeah, no. And I think then what we want to dive into is like short-term success is never what we're after. And at the end of the day, anything financial is a byproduct of either process-oriented metrics, which I'll largely attribute to Net Promoter Score, NPS, or churn rate. If I can own NPS, churn rate, and also probably to a certain extent, the social score of a Google review and or some other online reviewing system, I'm crushing. At the end of the day, I shouldn't have any problem with units. I shouldn't have any problem with productivity. Okay, that's great. Focus on your process metrics, but then at the end of the day, I've got to steer the company in the direction in which it continues to evolve. And you have to be ahead of trends, or at least on top of trends, so that your short-term success isn't potentially putting you in a situation where you're too then short-sighted to position the company to last. Whereas we had this tremendous trajectory going into the pandemic, it allowed us to kind of, I don't want to say bulldoze or almost juggernaut through the pandemic, but we were just able to just kind of put our head down and kind of carry some momentum, innovate. We were always very agile. We just had a team that was just very, very agile. Solutions first is one of our operating principles. So we're just continually thinking solutions, solutions, solutions. There's not a woe is me person in the company. There's not a, oh shoot, well, fixed mindset, external factors. Like, it's continually something. We are on offense at all times. That's another operating principle. So you have these operating principles that allow you to continue to push yourself in a direction where you are moving forward. But a lot of that then again starts with, and I don't think I really earned this title until I was probably going through the pandemic. Don't really earn the title of CEO early on. I know a lot of people have CEO on the website. I didn't deserve that title probably until we hit the pandemic, because I think largely when I think of a CEO, it's success of the company, which then largely relies on success of your people. We were able to not only keep all of our people, albeit a couple had to go furlough for a little while and then came back. We were able to grow. We were able to add benefits. We were able to add opportunity. And when you think of a time period where a lot of people can't say that, particularly in a lot of businesses, that's a time where I earn my stripes, where I feel very, very comfortable saying that success of the business during that time period largely was attributed to the focus on our people and making sure that we were able to allow people to continue to have a place to call home. And not only do that, but to do so in a fashion in which kept people safe. It kept our patients and people that interacted with our four walls safe, and allows us to sit kind of where we are today. So I guess then if I get into my routine, my decision-making every day is what can I do from a decision standpoint that knocks over the most amount of dominoes? If there are dominoes out in front of me that only knock down 2 dominoes, that's probably better off suited for somebody else. I probably can instruct them on that, and they can repetitively knock down 2 dominoes. But if we're trying to figure out how this intricate domino system is going up and over stuff and up stairs and down and moving this way and the other, and I need to figure out the way to knock down the 87 level complexity with regards to dominoes, then that's where I need to be attacking things. That's where I need to be voting more brain power. That's the thing where I think largely I will kind of hang my hat on my problem solving ability. That's probably one of the top 3 things I could say that I do really, really well is problem solve. But the more that I can make those high level decisions that influence many people or knock the most amount of dominoes down or kind of turn the ship the most efficiently, then that's better off being a task for me. So it has been a challenge. I'm never saying it's easy. I'm not to say there hasn't been certain time periods where I've had to kind of plug back in at certain times. Earlier this year, we had an employee with a mental health emergency. I had to plug back in periodically because I did not know how that would resolve itself. But never wish upon anybody, if you're an HR person, to call you and say, hey, so-and-so said they were going to hurt themselves this morning, and we have them going to a facility. So you do what you do, which is, you just plug in, you do what you do is best at a given notice. And I was back on the books for a period of time this year, just to kind of help support everybody working through that. So sometimes your best asset also is leading by example, and sometimes showing people that you're always willing to sweep the shed. For anybody that's read the book Legacy by the All Blacks, that's one of the operating principles of their team. Sweep the shed. Never too big, never too small. I can do just about anything. I have no problem taking out the trash. I have no problem folding towels. And I will kind of carry that with me through my years. I don't know if that kind of answers your question, Scott, but once again, I can kind of go a bunch of different directions and speak to a bunch of different things, but I think that largely ties into just, your operating principles again. My role is not more important than anybody else. My role is my role, and my role is predicated largely on my skill set, my experience. I can't run the front desk. I can't do the front desk. I literally couldn't sit at the front desk and do the front desk. So you have people who are at the front desk, they're exceptionally important, like unbelievably important. I can't do your job. I could learn, I could do certain things. I'd probably screw up way more than you could, even after a week, 2 weeks, whatever. You know why? My skill set is my skill set, and you have a skill set, and we all need to kind of shift and flow and be cross-trained to a certain extent so we can understand certain things. And I just need to continue to figure out what I'm best at. I think I'm getting closer and closer and closer to where I am best served. And hopefully with continued reflection, continued feedback from our team, I continue to put myself in the right seat on the bus, which I will always say the right seat on the bus for me is not always the driver's seat. There are times where I need to take a back seat. There are times I need to be right behind the person at the driver's seat. And there's some times where I just need to sit somewhere in the middle and just kind of blend in and let others have their turn at the driver's seat as well.
That's awesome. I like how you said the sweep the shed. That's something I really relate to. I've done like a ton of internships, and something moving forward I like to carry is just that intern mentality, right? Always
Yes.
kind of trying to do your part. But you've kind of highlighted the importance of like your team members and the people around you as part of like the success behind Rehab to Perform. So I'm just curious, like, how involved are you in the hiring process now that you guys are this big? And like, what are some of the main things you look for when bringing people onto the team, be it clinicians or, you know, administrative roles?
I think first and foremost at this point, I am definitely serving more as a filter rather than the decision maker or the person that signs off on things. So I like doing early intro. I like doing early reach out, especially for anything involving corporate or clinical staff. And I like to have conversation, and I like to get a pulse for where people are at. I like to ask more like philosophical and culture and value related questions. And then I like to honestly just tag my team in, because to be honest, I'm not working with an individual for 40 hours at an office. So why in the heck am I signing off on somebody working with 4, 5, 6, or 7 other humans? It does not make sense. So the way we do that, if a PT got added, they talked to every single other PT at that office, and every single PT at an office had to sign off on that new person joining their team, because it is their team and it is not my team. They have their own teams at their respective offices. They have a better pulse for what they need. I can offer in my 2 cents. I can offer in my feedback. I have been overridden before. I have no problem with that. And we also have had people internally at respective offices go 3-1 vote. And if it's a 3-1 vote, we still don't do it. We need a unanimous vote. So that's probably the biggest part at this point in time. And then from a clerical hiring standpoint, to be honest, I don't have the expertise that some of our corporate staff do in that world. I problem solve with regards to the attraction, the recruitment, the interview process, the communication throughout the process. I am involved in it, but my opinion there probably matters less. Again, I'm just a filter for the process as a whole, because I want the most efficient process possible. It's kind of crazy. We actually, when I was referencing earlier, great companies compete on process. It was actually related to our front desk attraction, recruitment, and hiring pipeline. And I had 6 or 7 things that we sent out. I sent out a Google form recently to every single person that had been behind the front desk or was currently behind the front desk at the office. And it was largely a collection of their feedback in an effort to hone what we're doing to get people onto our team. Because from a PT standpoint, I feel very confident saying this. I don't know that there's a whole lot of places that are doing a better job of attraction, recruitment, and getting people onto our team. I have a roster of people at this point in time that I know that I could reach out to, and also probably forecast a lot of the positions of which are going to be available. I already know that there's one member of our team leaving this summer. I know what he's looking for, but because we have the relationship, he doesn't feel ashamed to tell me that he's looking for a change of scenery and either wants to end up in military or pro sports. And I've already had 2 other PTs also end up in the NBA. So once again, through a relationship and creating this environment where your development is a priority, and we're doing things from a student internship pipeline standpoint that are pretty significant. We had 58 DPT students last year. We had 81 universities reach out for slots this year. So we have that roster. That bench is getting really, really, really deep. And then when you take care of your people and you have open lines of communication internally, you also typically have a pretty good idea of when people are leaving. And if they're leaving, they're giving you very, very advanced notice to put you in a situation where you can, be successful and not have significant issues. Now, we're only 7 offices. That's going to get more and more challenging, but as long as we have the mindset, we're going to continue to refine process. I'm confident that we're going to continue to find better and better ways at making sure that some of this stuff is done. And I almost completely forgot what the initial question was at that point in time, but I think I largely covered at least a majority of it.
Yeah, no, totally. That was definitely a lot to digest. And while we have some time, I would like to open up to the group. If anybody else has some questions, feel free to just chime in. But no, I love how you alluded to the roster. Honestly, excuse my language, but that was just badass.
Everything's a sport theme, man. Everything. So yeah, we're a sports team. We've gone back and forth between being the Avengers and the Golden State Warriors. And hey, right now I'd like to say that we're the Warriors.
Gotcha. All the culture talk was giving me Miami Heat vibes, though.
All right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's culture of a winning team is culture of a winning team.
Right.
It's culture of winning anything, whatever you want to call it, you know? So I think largely, you know, you look at other industries for inspiration. You look at other industries. What are other high achievers doing? I don't want to think that I'm that special where I'm an outlier. I want to follow playbooks that other people have put forth. I might have different ingredients in our recipe, but I don't know that a whole lot of what we're doing is that unique. It's just our collection of things might be unique, but other high achievers out there have done similar things, or maybe the exact thing in certain facets of what it is that they're doing.
Got you. So actually,
hi, Josh. Jose, may I?
No, yeah, you got it, George. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Josh. I used to teach administration and management at the University of San Agustin for health sciences. And one of the things that I taught my students about opening a business was almost what you were explaining when you are going to scale, rather than opening or making your practice a lot larger. Rather than doing that, just opening another clinic in a place in which the competition is not as fierce, and make it a brand. So what advice do you have for the attendees here in regards to scaling? So after opening a clinic, would you start from scratch? Would you acquire an existing business? What is your strategy, if you may? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, man, I could go so many different directions here too. First thing that comes to mind, I'm a big believer that, and I'm not going to say that maybe at some point you wouldn't consider it, but I think acquisition sometimes, or even kind of a pass down of an old business where maybe you're working in an office and you're eventually kind of taking the reins from somebody else, can be a bit messy. Now, I'm not going to say it couldn't potentially put you in a really, really beneficial situation, but I would argue that especially in situations where people are transitioning businesses on, sometimes those are trending poorly and people are also getting out because things are getting too challenging. They've kind of lost their vigor and energy over the past, say, few years. And that company trajectory largely isn't what it was, say, a decade ago. So maybe you're not catching the rising tide, but instead kind of catching on board with the sinking ship. And it's your job to come in and plug holes and figure out a way to keep that thing afloat. But for me, we started in a sublet space. I was in between 2 turf fields at a place called Frederick Indoor Sports Center. It was 1,200 square feet, and we had our waiting room. We eventually had 3 tables in there. It was tight by the time that we were done. And we got to walk out of the door and then go share gym space. So we had shared gym space. So from an overhead equipment standpoint, it was minimal. And in terms of the costs, it was minimal in terms of startup costs. And I can tell you, we paid $2,100 flat rate fee, which was really, really good right out of the gates. I know it was probably a little bit much for price per square foot, but it was full service, no equipment costs, nothing. And I thought that was largely positive. It's not to say you couldn't potentially get better deals out there and negotiate certain things, but hey, it was enough for us to be here today. And then If I get to really the key to scaling, and two keys, I had worked for people that put their name on their businesses. I absolutely despised the fact that somebody thought that they were going to put their name on their business and that other people were going to get excited about Jose Physical Therapy. Unless you hire a team full of Jose, physical therapists, I just can't imagine somebody being all that enthusiastic about a brand in which is largely tied to another individual, which almost creates a hierarchical mindset, which is I've always, been somebody that just, I don't like the hierarchical stuff. I don't like the organization charts that are like, kind of pyramids down where there's this one central person. Org charts should look differently, and they should be more circular where new people are rotating to the top. And that's a whole separate conversation in itself. But I wanted to create something that everybody could feel like they were a part of, everything, they were proud of all aspects of it, that they were able to readily influence the company so much that they felt like it was their own. And entrepreneur was the word that continually popped up for me. I wanted to create an environment where people could feel entrepreneurial and feel like that they had a say, that we were largely moving the boat because of the feedback that they were providing. So feedback is a gift. That's one of our operating principles. And that goes constantly throughout the course of the year. It's weekly, it's quarterly, it's informal, it's formal. We don't do year-end reviews. We do 360 reviews. And you know who talks the most? The person that is not doing the actual review. The whole point of the review is to get feedback and you just listen. And I tell people, if you're running this and you set up this meeting and you talk more than half the time, you did it wrong. You should be asking questions and then you just need to shut your mouth. The more feedback and the more responses you get, the more you're going to be in a situation where people feel like they're heard. They're going to be connected more because then you act on that stuff and they're going to continue to be engaged. You keep people that way. You are able to move forward and have a sticky environment where we've only had 6 PTs gone in 7.5 years, 2 to the MBA, 1 to military, 1 to home health, 1 because of a mental health emergency, and 1 that we had to let go because they honestly just weren't a fit within the 90-day window. 6 people, okay? That's from a clinical standpoint. I'm super, super proud of that. But what's the job of the person that runs a company? Your job is to serve your people. It is not to serve yourself. And now I could go down a whole conscious capitalism rabbit hole. I'm a big believer in conscious capitalism. Capitalism can be done differently. And I know that there are certain distastes with the word capitalism, but I think largely because certain entities have done it poorly. So if you look at shareholder versus stakeholder capitalism, if you're a conscious capitalist, you're a believer that stakeholders matter and that stakeholders go internally and externally, and that you're not just serving your pockets or your quote unquote leaders' pockets, but you're doing everything that you can to try to share in success, to share in growth, to share in development. And by focusing externally rather than internally, I'm going to continue to embody that and ideally be a servant leader and have my sole role be focused on success of the people. And the more that we focus on success of the people and we scale the people themselves, the company will continue to scale.
Thank you, Josh.
Absolutely. Thanks for the question.
If I may, Jose, thank you, Josh, so much for sharing your experience with us tonight. I appreciate it. I am the academic coordinator of the clinical education for Jose, probably he was, and you mentioned something about accepting students. It's a really impressive number, 58 students last year. It's really uncommon. We get offers from different companies across the nation, and we don't get these numbers from one location or from one company usually. So I'm really impressed with that. My question is, what's the process if a university wants to do a partnership or wants to send the students to a specific location of your facility? Do you have like a clinical education team, or do you require any interview for our student or certain requirements that we need to be aware of before we do that?
What school are you talking about right now?
University of St. Augustine.
I can probably look up Let me see if I've got it.
Okay.
And I guess it's what, I mean, I know it's in multiple places. University of St. Augustine, Patricia King, Program Director. Yes or no?
That's
St. Augustine campus.
St. Augustine
possibly.
campus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got 5 campuses. We're in Miami, St. Augustine, Austin, Dallas, and San Marcos.
All right. Well, I have Florida, and we have a contract set with the one in Florida. I don't know if that can carry over, but if anybody wants to send us over one from another state, I'll be happy to execute that myself.
Fantastic. Yeah,
other than-
that contract could execute over. We just need to review that with the contract team to make sure that something is possible.
Okay.
But I appreciate that you're willing to take our student. And I see Jose is very excited about this.
Yeah, no.
Very excited
Thank you,
about this
Josh.
too.
Talk
That's
about doing
awesome.
stuff during 2020. I reached out to every single program, at least to my knowledge, that was on the APTA website. So if your information was on the APTA website, I emailed every single contact on there and asked to set things up. So if at that point in time, it just wasn't up there,
Probably,
to be quite honest, not everybody responded to me. But I can look here at my spreadsheet of every single university that I reached out to, and I do not see.
Probably, Josh, you have the Florida campus, not the
Yeah.
contact from Austin campus. So
Right.
I'll-
Yeah, I
I'll-
don't see it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
But I'll put my name in the chat if that's okay with you, and then and my email. If you could just shoot me an email with your contact info, and we'll take it from there. That would be awesome.
yeah, I mean, I could just plug it in here for everybody, to be honest. So,
Perfect. Excellent.
yeah, we do resume, cover letter. We do an interview. To be quite honest, we are looking for people who clearly have a passion and want to dive deep into sports and orthopedics. We are not everything to everyone. We do not want somebody who's kind of casually interested in sports and ortho. Do not take that personally. But if we are to allow somebody to come in and to kind of work arm in arm with us, we cannot have a significant disconnect between what they're able to potentially speak to on a foundational level with regards to, if somebody needs to come in and they don't know how to teach a lunge, like that's probably going to be a struggle versus somebody who's probably had like personal training experience. And I might get a few chuckles here, but I'd be happy to share versus somebody who's been a bartender, a server, and served in various hospitality functions. Has largely shown some content, or some continuing education in fitness realm through one way or the other. Former athletes sometimes are really, really good fits. So, we want people that are going to come in and focus on connecting and be able to talk exercise and talk fitness and talk basic regressions and progressions. And not to say everybody has to be perfect. Obviously, that's a part of a good clin ed, but if somebody's kind of casually coming in and kind of just maybe exploring it, we just might not be that fit. So I don't say that for any other reason other than to just make sure that we continually get people that are a good fit for our environment.
Yeah,
because
former
honestly,
golf caddy
again,
here, so
more than
I hear
half
you,
of more than half of our current team at some point or the other was in our internship program. So we are very, very serious about attracting right fits. And we want people that come in who could potentially be in a situation where a year or 2 years after graduation, we're saying, hey, you filled out our blank sheet expressing interest in potentially joining our team at X, Y, and Z locations. Let's talk about it.
We'll do that. Thank you so much, Josh. I'll be in touch with you, but I really appreciate your willingness to take our students. Thank you.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, I've worked with Josh personally in the PT in the community movement for Patrick Berner, and I started that at CSM, that volunteer opportunity. And obviously having Josh on is an absolute pleasure for me, and I hope for you guys as well. But I would say that to me, if you're into sports and ortho, this is a great opportunity not only to go learn, but to go into one of these clinics possibly to work eventually, as they expand. Clinic after clinic after clinic after clinic. I just see it, coming down the pipeline. So I'm excited for Rehab to perform, but also excited for, again, like like Mansour said, the opportunity for our students to experience it as well.
For sure. I appreciate those sentiments, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I just left social media and my phone number in the chat too. Just text me availability. I'm not a huge typer. I'm just being honest. So if I'm very brief, it's for no other reason than I like to talk. I might even hit you with an audio message.
That's awesome. So Dr. Funk, just to kind of switch gears, I saw that you were recently awarded 2022 Innovator of the Year for Rehab to Perform. So I'm just curious, like, what that means to you, and like, what do you see, like, what's next? How do you do bigger than that?
Man, I tell you what, that was definitely an emotional moment for me. It was unexpected. I think we originally applied for the Practice of the Year. I wasn't necessarily, and sometimes you just take for granted innovation. And sometimes because you're in that environment all the time, you just kind of like, all right, this is how we do things. And yeah, it's really, really good. But I think it wasn't until you start talking to other people at events, and especially when I have somebody who just means a ton to me, who's been with us for about 4 years now. She started in a part-time front desk role. She then transitioned to daytime front desk. And now then she went behind the scenes at 2 offices, and now she is corporate, and she has a team of people that she oversees. And she was there. And a lot of our innovation is through process at the front desk. It's through process in terms of everything that goes on that supports our clinicians. And she's such a huge part of that. And then the other part where innovation, I think is a big part of something that we maybe take for granted is Matt, our CMO. Our marketing attracts greater than 80% of direct access referrals. We have less than 20% physician referrals at our office, and that is largely attributed to the marketing that goes on. And then, yeah, we have good customer service metrics. Our NPS is world-class at a 94. That's very, very, very rare. We've been able to maintain that world-class NPS as we've gone through growth. We just have started an intern house. Got an intern house that interns can come to. Then we house 4 interns. I'd love to say we're going to be able to do that more often. Our first interns were from University of Wisconsin, Nebraska, Simmons up in Boston, and I think North Texas. Awesome. All over the country, people coming, living in a house, hopefully connecting beyond just the clinical internship time. I just turned a 20-foot trailer into a partnership with Hyperice. We have a recovery trailer that shows up to events. I'll be at a CrossFit competition this week with 4 recovery boot setups, reclining chairs, a marketing screen TV, along with our standard table and tent, and it is bright freaking red. You can't miss it. So there's just, there's certain things that I think that we're doing that are just hopefully overall attracting people to the profession outside of just attracting people to our company. When they walk in and there's Drake and Post Malone or Kygo and Chainsmokers or, whoever else, playing on the radio, there's a different vibe, and they see PTs and joggers and, positive affirmation t-shirts rather than, scrubs or a shirt and a tie or something like that, or, hey, it's Tuesday. So actually we're wearing red polos and it's Tiger Woods Tuesday, and everybody at the office has red on. So, it's just it's a very different way, I think, of just approaching things. I think largely it makes people excited to come to work. And a more important part as well is it makes patients excited to come back. So we continue to buck trends with regards to churn rate, right? So people, are going to self-discharge, are typically going to self-discharge within 3 to 4 visits. How do you minimize that, knowing that if they self-discharge, their outcomes are going to be poor, their outcomes are going to be compromised. So that's what I'm trying to focus. And I haven't really mentioned it yet, and I'm almost surprised. The number one thing that I think of when making decisions for this company is, how do I make sure that this is not a grudge decision for an individual? That there is no friction present whatsoever for this to be viewed as a grudge purchase. It is a get to decision rather than a have to decision. And I think that largely drives us to continue to innovate as we move forward. Why do I have an in-house media team? Who else has an in-house media team that's a PT company? I do. I have a videographer and an editor. I just send them to events. Okay, boom. Yeah, it's an expense. Who cares? Because at the end of the day, it's going to continue to allow us to tell stories. It's going to continue to allow people to build brands. It's going to continue to allow us to build content, right? Y'all are going to laugh at me for this, but we just hit 5,000 on TikTok, and we've only been doing it for like 3 to 4 months. I'm kind of proud of that, you know? So it's going to continue to allow us, by thinking forward and looking at other industries, to ideally pull things in-house. And yeah, we need to get beyond just PT too. That's a whole separate conversation. But whether it's mental health or chiropractic or pelvic health, like I think, you know, nutrition, I think there's more for us in the future.
No, thank you for that answer. That's a whole lot of exciting things that you got mapped out and got going on. So that's cool. I'm excited to see all that unfold. But yeah, if anyone has any final questions that they want to get in here, just to be respectful of Dr. Funk's time before we wrap it up. I did really enjoy the whole, like,
if I may again.
Yeah, go ahead, Jorge.
So many of my students, when they wanted to know if the billing was done in-house or if the billing was done outside, oftentimes I told them, if you're going to bill in-house, you need to have a person that knows exactly what is happening, because it's very risky. Otherwise, the best thing to do is try to hire a company that does a good job for you and is able to get what you bill, the highest percentage possible, rather than just sitting on just one individual that may or might not do a good job. What is your opinion about that?
I've gone through different phases of I'd say of the position of our company. Right out of the gates, tried to do some of it myself. That was quickly a failure. I actually gave $5,000 to somebody also to help me get credentialed, and they ran off with the money. So that's a whole nother issue. So yeah, then we outsourced it. We outsourced it to a group. Things are going well. They're going well. Okay. Hey, I keep hearing about how good it is. So now that we're a little bit more established, all right, let's try to do it in-house. Guess what? Not good. Okay. Ran into cash flow issues, ran into issues. We've been outsourcing it again at this point, but I think largely we've grown to a point where we could probably bring on a team. So we're actually looking at bringing 3 people in-house and kind of having our own billing team. I'm going through the process of vetting some of these different groups, but if I can take expenses from 6.5 to potentially 2 to 3%, that's a couple $100,000 at this point in time. So a couple $100,000 decision, in addition to potentially improving our metrics, because we're kind of outgrowing the current place that we're at, and our AR trends kind of go through these times where I almost have to call somebody up and kind of spank them a little bit to kind of get what I need. And if your AR is outside of 90 days, that's not positive. If you have a certain amount of average days of AR outstanding, that's a not positive. And the reason that's not positive is because in a growing company, you need cash flow. I need cash flow to support us to continue to grow. When people hear the word profits, they sometimes get a negative, response. You have to profit to save yourself. You have to profit to invest yourself. So get over yourself if you think profits is something that's negative. We would not have been able to weather the pandemic the way we did without having reserves in the bank. Profits allow you to have reserves in the bank. And then for us right now, we get to grow without having to go get funding from outside groups, because we're waterfalling profits from offices into new offices. So I'm not having to continue to go to the bank, or worse, go to potentially some private equity company that's going to come and start to tell us to do stuff differently. So it allows us to control our culture. So if I can go from 6.5 again to 2.3, save a couple $100,000, take care of people, take care of growth of people, because that does allow you to grow the company, but then also have a bigger buffer and to take less money from the bank, or put off a point in time where we potentially need to get financing from somebody else, then it's a win-win. So I know I went a lot of different directions with that, but it's a little bit more nuanced.
Thank you, Josh.
So Josh, final question from me, kind of just came to me, but can you touch on, you kind of mentioned you graduated PT school. While you were in school, you had the thought of opening up your own practice. Can you touch on like the work-life balance as a new clinician, trying to like hone your skills and gain that experience, but also trying to establish your business at the same time? What's that look like?
Yeah. So just remember, I took 3.5 years working for other people before I cut the cord. So 3.5 years. During that time period, I did personal training. I actually started up another business that was a lacrosse services company that was my side hustle through college, through graduate school, and then turned into something much bigger. That was actually a business that I sold in 2018. It eventually, after 7 years, had club program, had 260 kids in the club program. That was both boys and girls. We delivered camps, clinics. If we're talking about revenue wise, it was almost an $800,000 company by the time that I was done with it. So I learned how to create a side hustle into something relatively big. And that's something, if you have something that you're good at or passionate about, what better way to trial business practices than that? Adding locations and adding people. Well, I had added teams and added coaches before. I'm not saying it was the same, but at least I was doing certain things and trialing it and getting better at it through my first attempt at business, which was not rehab to perform. So, and then, through grad school, I'm doing camps, clinics, like I said, personal training. I did some serving throughout grad school. I'm a big believer that, if you learn how to be a good server, a good bartender, you get customer service, so you'll really probably be a better PT than a 4.0 PT. And that's not meant to dig at anybody, but I just think there's so much more important things to develop yourself as a person than just books. And once again, that's just my opinion. But that was kind of what I was working on during that 3.5 years. Work-life balance. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it sucks. It's getting better and better and better. And largely, I would say I'm at a point in my life where more of it is self-imposed. So if it is self-imposed and I know that I'm going to sprint, I reach out to my social network, including my wife, who's waiting for me right now. And I say, hey, I'm gonna sprint for a little while. I just need you to kind of check on me and make sure that I'm good and make sure I'm not completely neglecting myself. But nobody ever, to my knowledge, was able to create a business by working 40 hours a week. So if 40 hours a week is something that burns you out, by all means, please save yourself the energy, the stress, all of the other negative potential things that could happen. It's just not for you. And if anybody tells you otherwise, they're probably lying to you and have some kind of incentive to charge you lump sums of money, which unfortunately I've seen a ton in our profession. And then you'll end up most likely being largely unimpressed with the results. So if you can't potentially rationalize having to spend time doing extra, then it might just not be for you. And that's perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be for everybody. I'm a big believer it's more of a calling than something you need motivated to do. In fact, when somebody asks me what motivates me to do what I do every day, I say it's not a motivation thing. It's just an operating system thing. I've been doing this my whole life. From my moment I was a paper boy in middle school to being a 3-sport athlete, juggling, a magnet program academically, in addition to having a summer job in high school. I mentioned it before. I worked through college of being a Division I athlete. I worked throughout graduate school. I had different jobs while I was going through PT school, and I had different side hustles while I was a 40-hour PT. So it's just one of those things where you kind of look at yourself and go, yeah, this is me. I don't really have any other way that I operate. And as Scott just put, it's just kind of how you do things, how you operate. And if you're not that person, find a place that'll allow you to be entrepreneurial. Every entrepreneur has to find entrepreneurs in order to really create anything outside of themselves and create something bigger. And entrepreneurs may need entrepreneurs to help create opportunities for them, or maybe break down some of the roadblocks that individual may have, that an entrepreneur just has a different way of viewing some of those issues. I would not be where I am today without finding an amazing group of entrepreneurs. So once again, it's not the person who's solely at the driver's seat of the bus. It's the person that knows how to flow in and out and potentially position people at the driver's seat of the bus at the right moments. And if they don't think they can be in the driver's seat of the bus, it's up to the entrepreneur to unpack what it is that they need to do to feel comfortable to be in that seat.
Wow, yeah, that was amazing. I think honestly, that was a great way to kind of cap off the night. I think I can speak for everybody here. That was a well-needed conversation today. Like, you just bring an energy, I think, like the game's been missing. So thank you for that.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here. If anybody wants to connect with me beyond today, I'd be more than happy to. Social media, email, phone, whatever kind of works best. But if you want to have more detailed conversation, I'll almost always take it to phone.
Appreciate that. And then thank you for everybody that's been in attendance. I think it was mentioned earlier, but we got kind of like nationwide attendance here. We got some San Marcos students, some Miami students, Austin, Texas in the house. So that's very nice to see. Definitely building that community of entrepreneurs here.
Let's go. I need more Cali. We've got West Coast University and Sam Merritt in the mix. That's all I got from Cali. We got a whole host of Texas. We just need to add St. Augustine.
We'll get you all 5 campuses, my friend. We'll get you in touch with all of them. But
all right,
man, it was a pleasure, man. I appreciate your time and look forward to talking to you later in the week, brother.
Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for the questions and your engagement. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.